Nishmat Barzel.
Yeah. So Tav Zayin Amud Beis 7b at the bottom of the page. There's a Mishnah there. So we're continuing on the theme of Ir Miklot, right? So what do we know in the Torah for an Ir Miklot? How do we know that there's such a thing as an Ir Miklot? So there's a famous pasuk, and this is really what this Mishnah is going to talk about, and the Gemara is going to discuss. What does this Mishnah? What does the pasuk say? It's a pasuk in Dvarim, chapter 19, pasuk number 5. The pasuk says that if someone's going to come with his friend to the yard, to the forest, right? He comes to the forest, and why is he coming there? Because he wants to chop down a tree or chop down trees, right? He's coming to cut wood, right? Well, how do you cut wood? Today you use a chainsaw. Back then you use an axe, right? An axe. That's how you cut it. Now the pasuk, so he's coming to cut. The pasuk continues, says v'nidcha yadai b'garzen lichres, and he uses his hand in order to swing the axe, in order to cut the tree. Lichres heights. Now what happens? V'nashal barzel mina eitz, and the metal. So now the pasuk says v'nashal habarzel mina eitz, that there's something that happens that either the halacha is like that, but the Gemara argues that, and we're going to bring up the Gemara in a moment. Either the pasuk is saying that the metal that's on top of the wood flies off, hits someone and kills him, right? Chas v'shalom, or because there's contact between the metal and the wood, which is the tree, and now something goes flying off of that tree, a splinter, a piece of wood goes flying off of that tree, right? Think about it. If you ever seen someone, right, what happens? It's a big to-do. There's wood flying everywhere, right? And because of that wood that flies, it kills somebody. So which one is it? That's really what the Gemara is going to be talking about. That's the machlokes. Which one is it? Is it the metal flying off the handle, or is it the wood chip that comes flying out of the tree because of the contact of the metal with the tree? That's the machlokes over here. Now I tell you la halacha, and that's why everybody's familiar with this. La halacha, it's talking about the metal flying off of the handle. If you ever look at your own hammer, or if you have an axe, I don't know why someone would have an axe today, but if you have an axe, two axes. So you look at the top. Three. Oh yeah. Going once, going twice.
Who doesn't need an axe?
Who doesn't need an axe, right? But if you look at the top, you'll see where
does he need an axe?
No, I know if I need an axe, I call Philip. So if you look at the top, you see that the wood goes into the metal, and you look at the top, it's usually open over there. Why is it open over there? Because they put in another nail or something in there to expand the wood, because otherwise that's what's going to happen. So think back in the day, they weren't so talented, or they didn't have such strong wood, or I mean, they may do. I'm sure they did a very good job, but still it could happen that when you lift it or when you're going down, it's going to fly away,
it
right?
Can still happen today.
Of course it could still happen today. Of course. Anyways, so now that we understand the pasuk, and now we're going to see the Gemara discussing it. So the Mishnah first, because the Mishnah doesn't mention the pasuk, the Gemara is going to mention the pasuk, and the Gemara is going to say that's what they're arguing about. So the Mishnah says, Nishmat habarzel mikatoi, if the metal gets dislodged from its handle, V'haragana kills. So Rabbi Omer Eine Geila. Rabbi says, no, this guy doesn't go to Ir Miklot. That's not what the pasuk is referring to. I'm giving you an explanation, right? But Rabbi says he does not go to Ir Miklot. And the sages and the halach is like the chachamim that he does go to Ir Miklot. He goes to a city of refuge. Now, what happens? Mina eitz. Mina eitz hamispakeya. Now, what happens if it was a splinter that came out of the tree when you hit it with the axe, right? So then mino eitz. So Rabbi Omer goyla v'cham Omer meina goyla. Rabbi says that's when you go to Ir Miklot, because that's what the pasuk is referring to. The sages say no, that's not what the pasuk is referring to. Think about it now. That piece of splinter is already secondhand. right? The axe that you're holding, that's your power, your strength, your brute force, right? Together with the fact that it's a piece of metal, so it's heavy, so it adds to your brute force, but still it's your brute force. The splinter that's coming out, splinter doesn't mean a tiny splinter. It could mean a massive piece of wood that could go flying, right? That splinter that comes out, that's already to a certain degree secondhand, right? Is it secondhand? It's not secondhand. It seems, and we're going to see in the Gemara, according to Rebbe, it's not secondhand. That's not secondhand. It's not koyach koichai. Koyach koichai, that's the concept of there's my strength, and there's the strength that gets caused by my strength, and that's not my strength themselves. So that's the difference between these two opinions in the Mishnah. So let's open up the Gemara. Let's go into the Gemara. Tanya, our sages have taught. There's a brayse that Rebbe tells the Chachamim, Rebbe tells the sages, right? It says, does it say in the pasuk that the piece of metal flew from its wood? It doesn't say eitzoi, its wood. What's its wood? The handle is its wood. Right, or eitzoi, his wood, right? But it doesn't say that. It says mina eitz, that it comes from the tree, from the wood of the tree, and that's the way Rebbe learns it, right? So why are you saying that? Right? That's the oid. But this is not good enough for Rebbe, and the Gemara is going to bring it up later. And he brings two. The Rebbe says that I have another proof for my opinion that it's talking that what the pasuk is talking about is not about the metal flying off. It's talking about a splinter coming off of the tree. So what's the oid? So nemar eitz lamata v'nemar eitz lamayla. It says 2 times eitz in the pasuk. If you want to look at if you have it, some of you might have it in the pasuk. It says that a person is coming with his friend to cut eitzin, and now v'nidcha yadai bagarzen lichreisa eitz, and then he was using his axe to cut the tree, lichreisa eitz, to cut the tree, and then the pasuk says v'nashal habarzel mina eitz, and now the barzel, the metal, something happened with the eitz. So now, if you're going to say that v'nashal means that now all of a sudden you're talking about a different eitz. You're talking about the eitz that he's holding in his hand, not the eitz that he's trying to cut down. Says 1 second. The pasuk says he went to cut the eitz, and now it says that the metal, something happened with the eitz. It can't be that it's talking about the eitz that he's holding in his hand. It has to be the splinter of so he uses two ways to explain to the sages why his opinion is right. Right?
What is this lamala lamata?
Earlier in the pasuk and later in the pasuk.
Okay.
Yeah, lamailo means up in the pasuk, lamata lower in the pasuk. Because think about it in a Torah scroll, right? In a Torah scroll, you have lamaila and lamata. That's in general in the Gemara when they discuss this, they'll say lamaila and lamata because it's in the way it is in a Torah.
That's why I said mateh, because it says here eitz hamud lamata.
Right.
I thought they used the word mateh because mateh would be the wood, the handle.
The handle.
That's what they should have said, really. If it was, it should say the barzel flew off the handle.
Right.
I don't know if it's proper to say a mateh for the handle, but
you could have used another word for handle.
Used better than eitz.
Right. So let's see it inside. Ma eitz ha'amr l'mayla. The time that the pasuk says eitz earlier in the pasuk, what's it referring to? It's referring to the wood that you're chopping down. So then it has to be af eitz amar lamato. So then the next a few words later, when it says eitz again, we can't say that it's talking about the handle. This is Rebbe's opinion. We can't say it's talking about the handle. It has to be talking about the eitz that you're cutting down, and that it's flying from there and killed someone, not the metal that was on the axe. This is the opinion of Rebbe. Obviously, it's an opinion that's not held today. We go according to Chachamim, the halacha in general. When there's an argument between one and the many, and here you have one Rebbe versus the many, the Chachamim. So halacha is like the Chachamim. But also we know, right? Whenever we think about the example of the pasuk, we think about the piece of metal flying off of the handle. That's the Chachamim. But keep in mind that Rebbe has 2 strong reasons as to why he says that it's talking about a splinter coming off the tree, a piece of wood flying off the tree, and not the metal. Okay, let's continue. Amar Rav Ashi, Amar Rav Chia bar Ashi, Amar Rav. Rav Chia bar Ashi comes and says, interestingly enough, Shneim Mikra Echad Arshu. They're both learning it from the same pasuk.
But let me just ask you, at the beginning of the Mishnah, it says Nishmat habarzel mikato v'harak.
Yeah.
What does that mean? It means the barzel mikato was displaced. It doesn't say anything but a piece of wood being displaced. The Mishnah says
That's the first case in the Mishnah, but what's the second case of the Mishnah?
Was this mikato v'harak?
That's the first case in the Mishnah. Rebbe says that's not what the pasuk is referring to, so therefore he doesn't go to Ir Miklat, and the sages say he does go to Ir Miklat. Now the second case of the Mishnah is Mina Eitz HaMispakeya, meaning that splinter that comes from the tree. Rebbe says he does go to Ir Miklat, because that's what the pasuk is referring to.
Right. So the first one, if it's barzel mikato v'harag, there's no argument.
No, there is. Rebbe says he doesn't go to Ir Miklat. He doesn't.
The first part of the Mishnah, there's no ambiguity. It's not a piece of wood that's hitting him. It's the nefesh habarzel, nishmat habarzel mikato v'harag.
So what does Rebbe say? Continue.
Rabbi Omer eino goleh. He
Doesn't go. Why? Because according to Rebbe, when it says in the pasuk about that scenario of someone going into the forest, it's not about the piece of metal flying; it's about the piece of wood flying.
It doesn't say piece of wood; it says nishmat habarzel mikato.
But what's the halacha? What's the halacha?
Well, I'm glad Rebbe's wrong.
You have an opinion. You have an opinion.
Yeah, because it doesn't mention nothing about wood. Maybe the second part mentions something about wood.
No, Philip, take a step back. Take a step back. I know, because you're coming with too many assumptions. Take one step back.
Okay.
If you take a step back, you'll be able to understand.
The blade was displaced. Go ahead.
Right? So they're arguing on the pasuk. What does the pasuk mean? What does the pasuk mean in that scenario, in that case? That's what they're arguing about. Okay. Rebbe says that it's talking about the splinter, like the second case, right. and Chachamim say that's talking about the Nishmat HaBarzel. According to Rebbe, Nishmat HaBarzel, he doesn't go to Ir Miklat. He doesn't go to Ir Miklat. Why? Because when the pasuk says that when he's with his friend and he uses the axe, according to Rebbe, that pasuk is not talking about the metal going flying. It's talking about the splinter going flying. Right? The Chachamim think otherwise. Now, Rebbe, we just learned the beginning of the Gemara, brings two reasons why he believes that way. Two proofs to his opinion. It's not Stam. Rebbe doesn't just Stam have an opinion. He has two very strong proofs to his opinion. Okay. Now the Gemara is going to continue and say, interestingly enough, that Rebbe and Chachamim learned it out from the same exact words. Rebbe learns that it's talking about the splinter of wood, and Chachamim say that it's talking about the head of the axe from the same exact word. So let's see it inside. They both learn it out from Kra Echad, from one pasuk, from the same exact pasuk. What is the pasuk? V'nashal habarzel min ha'etz. V'nashal habarzel min ha'etz. If I translate it, it will go more closer to the way the Chachamim learn it. But v'nashal habarzel means literally v'nashal, and it flew habarzel, the metal, min ha'etz, from the wood. Okay, Rebbe comes and says that it means that the metal hit the wood and then something went flying, right? But it's the same pasuk, and they both learn it from the same pasuk, right? Rebbe savar yesh ein l'masayis, that if you learn the pasuk in its plain text, the pashat pshat, you know that we have kri and ksiv, that sometimes something's written one way in the Torah, but we read it a different way, right? And there's hidden meanings in that. Who and he is famous, that you'll have it, but you'll have many other times that it's written one way in the Chumash, and you'll even have it in brackets, that in the Torah it's written otherwise. A Bal Koyer has to be very careful that he knows those very, very well, because that could be very confusing to a Bal Koyer. So, but that's one of the things you prepare for, right? So now there's a Messiah that Rebbe has, that we learn it v'nishal, not v'noshal, with a yud and a chirik under the nun. V'noshal, the way it's written is the way the Chachamim learn. V'nishal means it's part of an action. V'nishal, that you took the axe and you brought that axe towards the eights, and then something happened. And that's the way Rabbi learns the pasuk, right? So that yesh aim lamaseidus, there's tradition that we have from Moshe Rabbeinu that comes down generation to generation, that there's a deeper meaning, there's a different way that we learn this pasuk. And that's the way Rabbi learns. Rabbanan Savri yesh aim lamikra, that you give the mother load, you give the main focus to the way it is in the pasuk, the way it is in the mikra, and that is v'nashal karinan. You read it v'nashal, and that is the simple way to learn it, right? So now this is what Reb Chia bar Ashi says in the name of Rav. This is where they learn it from. So the Gemara right away says, hold on a second. Does Rebbe really hold yesh aim lamaseidus fidele? Does Rebbe really hold yesh aim lamaseidus, which means that there's certain, sometimes you take a pasuk out of its simple pshat, right? Does Rebbe really hold that way? So now we are on the top of Ches Amar Aleph. Rabbi, Rabbi Yehuda, Ben Royet, Ben Shammai, Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Kiva, Kulus Vidalu, Yesh Em Lemikra. That Rabbi Yitzchak says, we have a comment from Rabbi Yitzchak. Rabbi Yitzchak says Rabbi Yosef says it in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, that he gives a bunch of names, and Rabbi is one of them. Rabbi Yehuda, Ben Royet, Ben Shammai, Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Kiva, they all hold that Yeshem Lemikra, that when you look at a pasuk, you shouldn't look at the Masayres, at the tradition that came down from generation to generation. You should look at the translation of the pasuk, the literal Mikra, the pasuk, right? What do we just say? That the Rabbi says Yeshem Masayres. Here we have from a statement from Rabbi Yitzchak, Rabbi Yosef, name of Rabbi Yochanan, that Rabbi holds Yeshem Lemikra, not the Yeshem Masayres. So, which would mean that Rabbi should read the pasuk v'nashal and not v'nishal, right? So this is the question. So the Gemara answers, Hainu the kamar lahu v'oid. That's why Rabbi brought two proofs. Because he says one proof I'm going to tell you, right? One proof I'm going to tell you is that it says make eights and not eitzoi, which means that it's about the tree that he's hitting. Wood is referring to the tree and not to the wood that's the handle. Because if it was the handle, it would say it's wood, not the wood, right? So that's one thing. And then he says, Void, I also have another thing. If you are of the opinion that you go according to the Mercedes, look, according to the Mercedes, it's Venishal and not Venashal. So Rebbe doesn't necessarily hold that way, but for those who do hold that way, he brings it as a secondary answer. And that's why it's there as a secondary answer, not as the main answer. Amar Rav Papa says, now let's bring another scenario, but similar to our scenario. What's the scenario? The story is like this. A person is standing there and he's looking up on a, what's called tree? What is it translated over there? Palm tree, right?
Yeah.
A palm tree, and he wants the dates, but the dates are too high. He can't get to the dates. The dates are too high. The tamarim are too high. So what does he do? He takes some hard earth that's next to him and he throws it up. We've all done this at some point or another, right? You have a ball stuck in the tree, right? You have a ball stuck in the tree when you're a kid, and you take a stone or something and you throw it in order to get the ball to dislodge in the tree. But here it's about food, right? So he wants that out of the tree. So you're standing there, you're standing under the tree. You take a piece of hard earth and you throw it up, and it hits taka the tmarim, it hits the dates, and what happens is dates come crashing down and it hits someone on the head, and nebach, the guy dies. Right? So now, what did you do? Right? Is it your koyach? Is it your strength? Is it if you took that pile of hard earth and you threw it into someone's face and you killed him, of course, you killed the guy, right? That's it. But here, it's like a grama. It's something that you didn't do directly. Is it secondary or is it not secondary? And that's the question over here, right? So the Papa brings that story. So the Papa says that it's the same argument of Rebbe and Rabbanan that we have in our Mishnah. Rebbe and Chum in our Mishnah, they have the same machlekes also in this case. They have the same argument. Right? Meaning, is the pasuk referring, because think about it, when you use the axe, so if it dislodges straight from the axe, that's a direct hit, right? But if it dislodges, if the axe, your koyach, your strength, hits the axe into the tree, and that dislodges something, so that's like dislodging the fruit from the top of the tree. So they have an argument in that case, right? Rebbe says that you go to Ir Miklot, and Chachamim say you don't go to Ir Miklot in that case. So the Gemara first says Pshita, that's obvious. Like what's Rav Papa's chiddush? What's his novelty? What's he coming to tell you that that in this case? With this case about the tree, it's obvious that it's a similar argument to Rebbe and Chachamim. It makes sense. So what's the novelty? So the Gemara explains, you might think that in that case is different than the axe. What does Rebbe say? If the axe hits the tree and a splinter goes and hurts somebody, kills somebody, you're liable to go to Ir Miklot. So you might think that those are closer together as opposed to throwing something into the air, which by the time it hits, it doesn't have your strength anymore, right? And then the fruit falls, that's already koyach koychai. That's already a secondary strength, even according to the Rebbe. That means that you might think that the Rebbe would agree with Chachamim in that case. Comes our Papa and says no.
Gravity.
Yeah.
That's what it is. He hit something and then it fell. So that they say that's the secondary that it fell.
According to the sages.
Fall. That's gravity.
But the question is it what am I liable for? To what degree am I liable for? Right? And if it's a domino effect and the 100th thing killed somebody, am I still liable? I'm not liable anymore, right? Like at some point you're not liable. Chachamim say, so basically what we learn from here is that Chachamim say that you're not, first of all, everybody agrees that koichai you're liable for, meaning my brute strength, something that I did, I'm liable for, and koich koichai already you're not liable. But what's considered koich koichai? According to the sages, already that fruit falling from the tree because of you, but still it's koich koichai and you're not liable. According to Rebbe, it's still koichai because that was what you were trying to do. You were trying to get that fruit to fall off the tree, right? So Rebbe says you're still liable. It's not called koich koichai anymore. And that's the chiddush that Rav Papa says. So the Gemara says, Pshita, it's obvious. The Gemara says, no, you might have think that in such a case, Rebbe would agree with the sages. No, he doesn't agree with the sages. It's not considered koyach koyche. It's not considered second degree. It's considered to be first degree. So then the Gemara asks a very good question. So at what point do you consider it koyach koyche? Ella, koyach koyche l'Rebbe eichi mishkachas la. So at that point, the domino effect, maybe according to Rebbe, is always your koyach, because ultimately it came from you. So is there ever a case where it's considered koyach koychai and he's not liable? So the Gemara says, so the Gemara answers, Kikoin d'shda pisa v'machil girma v'azil girma machil kvasa. That if you threw that piece of earth, that hard piece of earth, but you didn't hit the fruit, you hit a branch, and that branch knocked the fruit down, that's called koyach koyche according to Rebbe. The sages say already a step before, Rebbe says it needs another step in between. And in that case, if you threw something on a tree and the tree had a branch and that branch hit the fruit and the fruit fell down and hit someone and killed him, so then it's called koyach koyche, and you don't go to Ir Miklot, you don't go to an Ari Miklot. So that is one Mishnah. Let's do part of it.
Doesn't mean you go free. See, this is
No.
They never say there is a judgment and there is a punishment, whether it's a fine, whether it's there is something.
But this case is really closer to Einus, so the person will probably not. In this case, because this case he had no intention whatsoever to kill chas v'shalom anybody, right? He was trying to get some fruit down, and not only that, he didn't even hit the fruit directly; he indirectly hit the fruit. So it's karev la'inus as opposed to where you go to Ir Miklot. Next Mishnah, Hazaydik Even l'Rishus Harabim. So this is a very common case. A common case. It shouldn't be a common case. You're standing in your backyard. You're on your deck, and you have little pebbles in your hand, and you're throwing them into the Rishus Harabim. What's the Rishus Harabim? You're throwing them into the carry, basically, right? Rishus Harabim is not wood lawn. It's not a quiet street. We're talking about a busy street. People are coming, people are going. It's a marketplace. There's things happening there, right? So if you throw a stone from your yard into the public domain, and by mistake, right? This is a shoygig, right? This is not an eines. This is a shaygig. That's the key point over here. The difference, as we talked about last week or 2 weeks ago, difference between a eines and a shaygig. An eines means that you had no control over it. Like you were trying to get a fruit down, you threw it, it hit a branch, and the branch hit the fruit, and that fruit killed somebody. That's an eines. Shaygig is that you had the axe and you threw it and you weren't careful enough and someone got killed from it. That's a shaygig. That's something that you have to go to Ir Miklot for. Okay, so this person that throws this rock, he has to go to Ir Miklot. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov comes and says, you're looking at the Rishus Harabim, you're looking at the public domain, and you throw the rock. There's nobody there. But all of a sudden, after the rock left your hand, someone sticks his head out of a window or sticks his head around the bend of a building, right? And Nabach, it hit him, right? So then that's pater. That's more oinus. And therefore, that person doesn't go to the Ir Miklot. That's what Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov says. Now the Mishnah continues. If he was in his own backyard and he's throwing it inside his own yard or in his own field, he owns a big field, right? He lives in Saint Lazare and he has a big field, right? And he throws it within his own field, and there's someone else in the field, and he killed this guy by throwing this rock. Right? So we talked about this already last week. If the person who he killed has permission to be there, right? He has permission, he's allowed to be there. So then Goyle, then he has to go to exile, he has to go to Ir Miklot. But Vim Lav, the guy just snuck in there. We're not talking about that the guy snuck in there and he's upset and he throws the rock at him to kill him. No, chas v'shalom. It was still a mistake, but the guy has no permission to be there. The guy was in the Rishus Harabim, he was in the public domain, and his ball fell in, right? So he's coming to get his ball, right? We didn't ask permission to go there. So the guy doesn't have to assume that there's someone else in my yard that I have to be careful about, right? So then in a goyla, so then he doesn't have to go to Ir Miklot, it's an oinus. Shenemar, and what's the proof of this? What's the pasuk? The Mishnah says in the pasuk, that the pasuk is referring to in the forest. What's unique about the forest? That's what he continues. A forest belongs to everybody. It belongs to nobody and everybody. So they're just like a forest, anybody's allowed to go in there. So anybody is allowed to, it only in a case where they have permission to be there does the person who killed by mistake go to Ir Miklot. So obviously my own yard, that there's no permission for the other person to go in there, so the pasuk doesn't apply, and the Ir Miklot doesn't apply in that case. Abba Shaul continues and adds to this in this Mishnah, and he says, that when do we talk about in a case where you by mistake kill someone, right? When you're talking about in a case where you have where it's not obligatory, it's reshus. You're allowed to, right? Reshus means that you're allowed to. So, but you don't have to. You could go cut wood. You don't have to cut wood, right? So that's the idea of cutting wood. So yatsa av hamakes b'nai. So what goes out of this category, a father that has to teach his son. We don't do it today, but back then, if you had to spank your child, and chas v'shalom, if something happened and you spanked the child and he died from it, so then you don't go to your miklat. It's closer to Einas. Also, a teacher and a student, right? Back in the day, they would also use v'chin shlich bezdin, and also someone that's giving lashes on behalf of the bezdin, right? We talked about Malkus. The whole first chapter of Makkos talks about Malkus, talks about lashes, and in a case where the person is giving the lashes, it's not, he has to give those lashes, meaning the Beis Din has to give those lashes, and therefore he's doing his job. He's doing his job, so he doesn't have to go to Ir Miklot if someone dies because of it.
Here they say, it's interesting how Steinsaltz says, excluding a father who strikes his son, a teacher who oppresses a student, and an agent of the court deputized to flog transgressors. So Steinsaltz says these three, they failed, unintentionally killed the other person, each is exempt from exile, as the killing took place in the course of the performance of a mitzvah. It's a mitzvah.
Right.
To discipline your son and to oppress. If he doesn't want to learn Torah.
Well, it's a mitzvah to discipline. No,
Yeah,
it shouldn't be a
Hebrew
grabio.
says for a good reason. I mean,
Yeah.
You know, if he doesn't want to learn Torah, so you have to discipline him. That's a mitzvah.
Or he was outside and he started up with someone he shouldn't have started up with, and you have to
take a job,
and you
learn
have
a job.
No, but or it's a young child, and the child is not you need to discipline the child. He's running into the street, and the only way is you give him a good patch before he, that way he shouldn't run into the street. Okay. Very good. Okay, so now let's go into the Gemara. The Gemara says, the Gemara says the Mishnah just told us that if he throws a rock into the Rishus Harabim, right, and he kills somebody, he has to go to Ir Miklot. But we know that if someone's mazed, if someone does something on purpose, they don't go to Ir Miklot, right? When you throw a stone into the carrier, you're going to hit someone. And you're going to hurt someone, right? So now they're in a car. But if it was throngs of people walking, you're going to hurt someone really bad, right? So why is he going to Ir Miklot? So Amr of Shmuel Bar Yitzchak, that it's talking about that someone, he has a field, and the field is next to a public domain, and he has a wall, and the wall is made out of stones, right? And he's taking apart that wall. He's taking apart the wall, so he's throwing away the stones. He's on the top of the wall, and he's throwing them down, and that's when he hits someone. So the Gemara says, "Why? But that's not an excuse. You're next to throngs of people walking by. You got to look. You got to see what you're doing." So the Gemara says, no, okay, so it's talking about B'Saiser Skaisa B'Layla. He's doing it by night, so he's not expecting anybody to be there. So the Gemara says, no, even by night, it's a Rishus Harabim, it's public domain. You have to look, and you have to make sure that there's nobody there before you throw a stone down, right? So the Gemara says, okay, so it's talking B'Saiser Skaisa L'Ashba, that he's taking apart his wall, and he's throwing the stones where there's garbage. What does it mean when there's garbage? It's an outhouse where people go to the bathroom. Today we think about garbage, think about garbage bags. That's what garbage was back then. Nothing was recycled. They used it again. Nobody threw out stuff, right? What does ashba mean? It's a place where people went to the bathroom. So it's an outhouse. It's an out area where people went to the bathroom. And that's where he was throwing the stones. So the Gemara says, "Hi ashba echidami." This place, this bathroom. What's the story? If it's a place where a lot of people use in order to go to the bathroom, so he's terrible. This guy is a pesheah. He should have known better. And then it's mazid. And if it's a place where not a lot of people come, people don't really go there. So then onosu, then he's an einus. So then either way, he shouldn't be going to an Ir Miklot. He shouldn't be going to a city of refuge. In this case, so the Gemara says no. Okay, I'm gonna pop it. That it's a bathroom that people use only by night, rarely used by day. And he's obviously standing there by day and taking apart and throwing the stones there. So he's not expecting anybody to be there. But there are times that someone will come there and sit by day to go to the bathroom. So Pesheah lo yave, he's not considered Pesheah, it's not a mazid, because it's not really a place that's open during the day. And Einus not lo yave, and it's also not an Einus because there is cases that people do come and sit there during the day. Okay, so that's one aspect of the Mishnah that it clarifies. We're going to clarify one more aspect of the Mishnah.
Wait a minute. How does it clarify? Because the Mishnah we just learned before says Hazorek Evan Livashut Harabim Vaharag Harazeh Gola.
Right now, the Gemara comes and clarifies and says it's not really to throw into Rishus Harabim. It's when he threw stones that he was getting rid of into a bathroom place that wasn't really being used. That's what the Gemara says. That's clarifying the Mishnah, right? Yeah, that's the Gemara. That's
the thing about public domain is that anybody can do what they want in public domain.
But the question also is how, not only what people could do, but what people actually do. And that's where the differentiation is. And this place it's public domain. So yes, anybody could come there during the day, but it's not because it's a bathroom. So people don't really come there when it's light outside. They come there after dark. So that's when it's very busy. But by day, what if someone's stuck and they have nowhere else to go to the bathroom? They are going to come there. So therefore, he has to go to Ir Miklat. Now, the next part of the Mishnah says, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov Aimer. What does Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov say? He says that if you threw the stone after it left your hand, then someone stuck their head out of a window, and that's what happened. So it's not then it's potter. It doesn't have to go to Ir Miklat. Tana Rabbanan, rabbis have taught umatza prat lemamtzi esatzmai. Umatza means that it found something that was there before. Right? Meaning you threw a stone and it found the target. What does it mean it found the target? The target was there when you threw it. And that's the way the rabbis explain the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, that it has to find something that was there before. The target has to have been there when he threw it. Okay, so it's an interesting way to learn the pasuk. Umatza, it finds. What does it find? Something that was there when he threw it. And this is where Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov learns his halacha from. Now the Gemara says, hold on a second. Matzah? You're going to tell me, when you say the word matzah, finding, what do you think? You think it's finding something that was there or wasn't there before? What does it mean find? When I find something, it means that it wasn't there before. I was looking for it. I couldn't find it. Now I found it. It was gone before, and now I found it, right? But what does he say over here? What did the Braisa say? That matzah means that it found something that was there before. It's a weird way to learn the word matzah. And the Gemara asks that, Lemeimra, are you going to tell me? Are you really trying to tell me the matzah meikara mashma? Matzah prat lematzah. Here the Gemara goes and brings up another place in the Gemara, and another place in the Torah that says matzah. So I have to give you some background because the Gemara over here does not give you any background. So the story is like this: in the land of Israel was separated to the 12 tribes. Every tribe got a section in the land of Israel. Now, if someone sold their land, it's not l'tzmisos, it's not forever. The pasuk says, right? In the Jubilee year, in Yovel, goes back to the original owners. So that land is called Sdei Achuzah, the land that I have real deep connection to. I could have sold it, but I have a deep connection to because it's my family. This belonged to my family since Yeshua, right? So this is what that Sdei Achuzah is referring to. Okay. Now, what happens if someone sells a Sdei Achuzah? Yankel, short on money or whatever, he can't take care of the land. He sells a Sdei Achuzah. He sells it to Shmerel. Now Shmerel knows that he only has it till Yovel. There's a caveat though. The pasuk says that if Yankel comes and says, you know what, I really want it back before then, he's allowed to pay him the difference, right? If he gave him $100 for 10 years and it's 5 years later, he could give him $50 and take back the land for the next 5 years. There's a pasuk in the Torah. Sdei Achuzah, you can release. But the pasuk says over there, matzah, he found money. He didn't have money before, he found money. So now we're translating matzah differently. That matzah means that it wasn't there before. The matzah that we say in our pasuk says that the target was there and it found the target, right? And here we're saying, no, matzah is dafka, because the halacha is, by the way, the halacha is that a person that had money and he sold that field, he has to wait till Yovel. He can't get it back. It's only that he really sold it out of being destitute, and now all of a sudden he has money, so he could go back and get it. So what the pasuk says, to the extent that he can't even, if he had another land, he had another piece of land, and he sells that land in order to buy back this land. No, that's not matzah. That's not gefunden geld. That's not found money, right? So which one is it? When you say matzah, which one is it? Is it finding something that was there all along? right? As the case of throwing a stone into the Rishus Rabbim, matzah means finding the target. The target had to have always been there, because if the target came after I threw the rock already was released from my hand, and then the target came. So now the target found the rock, not the rock found the target. That's a different story, and he doesn't have to go to what's it called? So, or do we say matzah means that that it's something brand new, something that didn't exist? Which one is it? So the Gemara says, no. You have to understand it within the verse. What does matzah mean? Matzah could mean one thing in one pasuk. It can mean another thing in another pasuk. You have to understand it within the verse. Over there, when it's talking about the stachus of the land, it says because the pasuk says his hand went and got something. What does that mean? That he did a good business deal and he got umatzah and he found money, right? So from the verse we know that over there matzah means that it didn't exist before. What does it mean that he found he did well in business, right? It means now. So af matzah now mimashka. So in that pasuk, when it says matzah, it means that it's something new that wasn't there before. But over here, minyane dekra, from the understanding of the pasuk says that you're in the forest. You're in the forest. Umatzah, and you find, right? So matzah dumya diyar. The matzah over there, the finding over there, is similar to the forest. The forest ain't going anywhere, right? Ma'yar mididisi mikara. The forest was always there and will always be there. So afu matzah nami mididisi mikara. So also matzah has to be referring to something that was there when the stone got dislodged from your hand. With that, we finish the shir for today, and we're going to continue. Mitzvah Hashem next week.